Good evening, folks. It's Freddy Vazquez. Happy Friday. Anthony DiMaggio, former Yonkers police lieutenant, 15-year veteran of the Yonkers Police Department, back with me to continue discussing his story. This also was a rough week for the Yonkers Police Department. All the men and women in uniform who so bravely go out into the streets every day to keep us safe. We'll talk about that in a bit. So help me welcome Anthony DiMaggio.
How you doing, Fred?
Anthony, how you doing? How's everything? How you been? Folks, thank you for joining us. Freddy Vazquez. I'm with Anthony DiMaggio. As I said, 15-year police veteran, former lieutenant with the Yonkers Police Department. Scored a perfect score on the lieutenant's exam. So it's not like he was handed that, right? You know, so I got to mention that because I love education, and that shows how smart you are, right? But anyway, I want to say that. I want to, real quick, before we get into, what we're going to discuss tonight, Anthony, just to give some acknowledgement to the family and, the friends and all the Yonkers police officers who are mourning the loss of Detective Sergeant Frank Goldino. And, it's really sad because I've heard a bunch of nice stuff about him. And, it's always sad, anyone, I'm just saying. But when people really make it a point to say he was a good guy, he was a cop's cop, a good human being, it really makes it more even like. So I don't know if you want to give a couple words about him. I know you are familiar with Detective Sergeant Frank Goldino.
Yeah, Frank. We called him Furby after the kid's toy that was popular in the late 90s. And he had that nickname, long before I joined the YPD. I can only speculate as to why they called him that. Is because he was short and friendly and extremely gentle and extremely helpful. Whenever there's a tragic incident like this, and unfortunately they happen frequently, people always step up and say kind words about the deceased. So that's not uncommon. But, in a situation like this where the guy really was just a gem all around, wasn't a dear friend of mine. I did consider him a friend, especially earlier in my career. On more than one occasion during my years in the 3rd Precinct, he intervened in some situations that got hairy between me and some other cops because I was not well liked when I first got on. I had a father in high places. Right off the bat, you come into the department in a situation like that where you have a high-ranking parent, and usually you start off people not liking you just for that very reason. Some people thought I had a chip on my shoulder. Maybe I did. I don't know. But there were situations that I'm just not going to talk about really now because I don't want to take anything away from the grief that people are feeling. But he intervened on more than one occasion and settled disputes before they got too out of hand. And he was just that kind of a guy. He was helpful. He really was helpful, beyond kind and gentle. He was a go-to guy within the precinct. If something was getting hairy in the workplace, he would step in and solve it. He was a PBA trustee, and he was just, for me to feel the way I did when I heard it was him, and I haven't even seen the guy in a lot of years or spoken to him, and I was heartbroken, man. I really was. I was just like, who can this be? When I first found out, somebody told me that a Yonkers cop had passed away in a motor vehicle accident on Tuckahoe Road. Now, I don't work in the city anymore. I work out of the city. So when I heard this, I said, oh my God. It's terrible enough without even knowing who it was. And then I'm wondering, who is it? Who is it? So I called my father, who was out on the town. He was out having dinner somewhere. And I said, do you know what happened on Tuckahoe Road? And he told me. He said, yeah, it's Frank Goldino. I said, oh my God. Furby, you got to be kidding me. I couldn't believe it. Audio, Fred. Audio.
Sorry, yeah. I was saying that you said that he would go out of his way to help people. He was that kind of of an officer, but just that kind of, I like to say, a human in person. And just very recently, they mentioned he actually went out of his way to save the life of a 3-year-old that was in a funeral procession, right? He rushed the 3-year-old to the hospital, saving the life. And so, and they say that, it's the good ones that go, young, the good die young. And, we hate to think that, but see, it is. And sometimes, it's the great ones, and so I want to send up my condolences, my prayers, my respects, and, to the family and friends, and again, to the Yonkers Police Department as a whole, because I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah. There's been a lot of buzz about the incident, the situation since. I think it's been a little over a week now. And people are wondering about the young man that caused this accident and who is he, and a lot of politics being played and things like that. And, I think that the administration is at some point going to have to come out with some more information. Just think right now they're calculating everything very carefully, what they say, what they don't say. Obviously, the laws about 16-year-olds were just changed a couple of years ago. Up until 2 or 3 years ago, they were considered adults. So this young man probably would have been in handcuffs for manslaughter if it was just 2 or 3 years ago. But now he's considered a juvenile delinquent, so it's very, very different.
Well, I mean, even if he wasn't, excuse me, an adult or able to be charged as an adult, the individual has been in a coma. There's actually, from what I'm hearing, sources are telling me that there's been no brain activity for, since the accident happened, or for the past 2 days. I think for the past 2 days. I'm sorry, let me say that, the past 2 days. So there's a very big possibility that the young man may not make it. And so, a lot of people are upset because the officer passed away. Yes, tragic all around. And so, there's a family also that's grieving. And I just want to at least acknowledge that, maybe poor decisions were made, and that, has to be addressed and answered to, but we also have to recognize that, a life is also, could be lost as well. This young man who made a mistake, a big, huge mistake that really hurt a lot of people. And again, accountability needs to be, justice needs to be served in whatever way. But, as it just consider that also, I just as a humane, thing, you know what I mean? Because I know that there's, a lot of flares and stuff, because the officer and a lot of people loved Detective Sergeant Galdino. I mean, the funeral, if anyone's seen the funeral, the amount of people that were there.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah.
Right. Oh, wow. I couldn't believe it. Wow. That's all I got to say. Wow.
Yeah. I wouldn't, if it was me, I wouldn't have had a third of that amount of people.
Yeah, not many people would actually.
There were guys, there were guys, retired guys flying in from all over the country to go to that funeral.
Really?
I spoke to some of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I saw some of the pictures. I just saw like a sea of cops. The sea of cops just up the road. Wow.
On rooftops, on top of garages, everywhere. And I thought it was broadcast very well on all the different Facebook platforms. I actually watched it on one of them. Look, I hope this kid pulls through. I really do. I don't wish death on anybody, I don't wish physical harm on anybody.
Right.
Even if he lives, he's going to have a hell of a price to pay just mentally.
Sure.
On top of whatever, physical disabilities he comes out of this with. He's going to have to live his entire life knowing that he killed somebody, a good man.
Yeah.
So I hope he does recover. At this point, we could just hope for
and I'm sure
minimal amount of tragedy.
And I'm sure, and I like to think, at least, if it were me, I like to think that the family is not only are they, saddened and going through, the pain and hurt that their loved one, the child is, 16-year-old is a child, shouldn't have been in that car with, no license, especially may not pull through, but I'm sure they're also feeling the guilt of what happened and, what the family of Detective Sergeant Galdino is going through. They're not, he's not here anymore. And they know that their decisions that they made, caused that. And so I would only imagine that alone is going to be eating them, at least if they have a conscience, right? Because some people just don't have a conscience, but if they have a conscience, that's really probably weighing on it a lot, I'm sure. Especially seeing the amount of people that loved him and the amount of people that were there at his funeral, showing support and love for him and his family. It's really, something I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm told that the young man was he was a member of the local drag racing circuit, And I dealt with that as I was explaining to Harrod a little bit, actually. As a sergeant in the first precinct for, I think probably a good 6 or so years.
You guys
Maybe
cover Central
no, maybe
Avenue.
4. Yeah, maybe 4 years. I dealt with that all the time. I worked the midnight shift in the first precinct, and that was probably the main problem. That and larcenies from auto. Things being stolen from vehicles. But the drag racing, the speeding, and the fancy cars, it's a big problem. And it's a big problem not because it's unsolvable, but because a lot of those kids, they come from very rich families. They're very well connected.
Mm.
More arrests for reckless driving should be made, but they're not because of those connections.
Yeah.
So
The
usually the most
UIs
that
and all that.
happens, usually the most that happens with those. I mean, they fly up and down Central, and it's at nighttime racing and hanging out in the parking lots of the businesses that are closed. Sometimes they hang out in the parking lot of Dunkin' Donuts over on Tuckahoe Road. And those people call us sometimes. Usually all that ever really happens is they'll put a detail together, go out and write some summages, maybe impound a car or two, but arrests don't really get made when they should. And the reason for that is the connections.
Well, it said that this kid, from sources that have reached out to me, that his family's connected to the school on Walnut and Yonkers Avenue, this school where it's a religious school for Muslim religion. And so
Right.
they have something to do with that school, Pakistani family. And so, that's
very
definitely
possible. I
something
mean,
that's.
yeah, but I'm not talking about just him specifically.
Oh, yeah,
In
a
general,
lot, yeah.
you go out there and you try to drop the hammer on those on those on those speeders. All the cars are worth over $100,000, and they're all souped up. And you write summonses. Those kids, and I call them kids. Some of them are even in their 20s. Some of them are not even from the area. Down the Bronx and stuff. They come up, and
Really?
they don't look at summonses and impounds as a deterrent to keep doing it. They just look at it as a temporary nuisance. Almost
It's
like
a part of doing business.
right overhead. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
what would get the message across more is if the first precinct cops were allowed to go out there and make arrests, or even directed to go out there and make arrests.
Right.
That's what should be happening a lot more than it actually is. That would shut the problem down for good. And if it resurfaced down the line a little bit, you just start doing the same thing all over again. You go out there and arrest people for reckless driving. It's a misdemeanor.
Right.
It's arrestable. So that's what should be happening.
It's just, I feel like a hypocrite almost having this conversation because I do enjoy cars that are fast but it's like back in the day, right, when people used to race and stuff like that in cars, they would go and take it somewhere, would not be where everybody was driving and on a busy day during the week when people are coming home, right? And it's just now that they're just very irresponsible. And I don't know where's their responsible way to do it. You could go on a track also, but it's just they now just really just don't care, right? It just in the traffic when it's rush hour and all that, and they don't up and down Lockwood where there's schools and stuff, and I've complained about that myself. I've recorded it and I sent it to councilmen and posted it and stuff like that. So it's just complete disregard.
If you go up in your, and we have a Porsche.
No, I have a Mercedes. I drive Mercedes. The AMG, I have an AMG and stuff.
Okay, so if you go up to Central Avenue at night in your Mercedes and you start drag racing with people doing 125 miles an hour down Central Avenue, you're going to go to jail. Freddy Vazquez, especially Freddy Vazquez, is going to go to jail.
Oh yeah. I know. I was warned not to do anything, not even run a red light.
There's a little bit too much who you are instead of what you did going on.
Well, the state trooper once pulled me over, and this was many years ago on a motorcycle. And he said that, I guess I was doing 100 miles. Well, I don't know if I was or the guy in front of me, but we both got pulled over. He said, 100 miles an hour, he could have taken us to jail. Right. So I guess I don't know if there's a law or over 100 miles an hour, you can go to jail for that excessive speed. So there is maybe something,
It's reckless driving. I don't know. I was never a traffic cop. I never caught anybody doing 100 miles an hour. So
on Central Avenue, there's been times because of the car that I've been in, I've pulled up to the light and somebody just pulled up right alongside me and wanted to give me the indication of wanting to race me. And they're like, wait, I've noticed that they'll wait on the side of Central Avenue till they see, I guess, a car that they think is worthy of racing maybe. And then they'll come and pull alongside you and want to race you. Right. And I've seen the same car like multiple times. One guy was in a Range Rover, right, trying to race. I'm like, dude, I had an older lady. She must have been in her 70s in an S-Class Mercedes trying to race me, going speed. I let her go. I said, you got it. Go ahead. Down Central Avenue the other day. I thought it was very funny.
A good decision, yeah.
Yeah, no, I let it go. Listen, they're always out there, especially during, times when there's a lot of, cars coming home, traffic and stuff like that. So I know that they're out there and they do, but they could only do so much, right? They can't be everywhere all the time. And unfortunately, there was a cop there at this point, right? At this time, unfortunately, he was involved in the accident, and so that's a tragedy. But anyway, we're going to send our condolences to the family, and the friends and police department, they're mourning. And and I hope that they get the closure that they're looking for.
Me too.
So Anthony DiMaggio, how you doing, man? Let's get into your story again. What do you want to start off? I know you sent me 2 emails, and you mentioned something last week about Tim Hodges, and you've been mentioning that, and I've kind of been interested in see what do you mean by that? Tim Hodges, former deputy chief, correct? Yonkers Police Department. No, did I get it wrong?
First deputy chief.
First deputy chief.
There were 3 chiefs under the commissioner, and each of them heads up a different bureau. We've spoken about that a little bit. We'll speak about it again. So Timmy Hodges at one point sat me down. I actually looked through some of the material that I have in preparation for the podcast, and it's actually on January 8th. So just to recap where we left off, we're still in the very early stages of this whole situation that went on with me. So we went through the crime scene, and there will be a reference back to that in some of the material for tonight. The crime scene, I think, was on I want to say the 7th podcast that we did. We all remember, all of us who watched it remember what was on the footage. It was basically it was a pistol whipping.
Oh yeah.
And then these 3 idiots were jumping this one guy in the store, and he gets up and they chase him out, and then the detectives show up to the scene, and you go back and watch it.
That was a good podcast.
Then on the next one, podcast 8, we had to deal with some of the saboteurs who tried to interfere in podcast 7. So we put the situation on hold.
Right. So you have people commenting, right? Just want to say people commenting and saying things to Anthony, trying to agitate you. And actually, one of them, you maybe a couple actually, you've called out, and you were right about it, And I had one of them was officer, and all due respect, I really don't want to have issues with anybody. Wayne Simos was one of the fake profiles, but eventually he came forward and he did email me and reached out to me, and we emailed for a bit and stuff like that. We had a good conversation. Listen, I'm all about always resolving and issues and coming to a middle ground with people, right? Why ever have conflict? So that was interesting, but it stopped since, I believe.
Yeah, there'll always be some new numbskull who thinks he's not going to get figured out, but they all get figured out. They give themselves away sooner or later.
I think that's why they stopped. They don't want to get figured out.
Right. One of the cardinal rules of good police work is that when you know someone is lying, when you know someone is full of shit, like someone with a fake name obviously is, keep them talking. Keep them talking. They're going to give themselves away. They're going to make a mistake at some point.
1,000%.
Just let them talk and go on and on and on and on and on.
1,000%. So let's get into these emails.
So on podcast number 9, we went through a 20 email chain.
Yeah.
Where I started out by sending a couple of chiefs, a couple of captains, an email, basically saying that Louis Venturino had left me a voicemail of an aggressive, confrontational, and threatening nature. Right. The emails that followed, there was a meeting that was going to be set up in Joe Monaco's office, the chief of the Investigations Bureau, Louis Venturino's chief. In more emails, you can see there's words going back and forth. Breadstick Campanini weighs in, and he basically admits that I was right to complain about the mishandling of the crime scene by the detectives that showed up that day. And then he tries to spin it and say, well, I think that you're only complaining about this basically because your daughter's mother was at the scene and you two don't get along. So now you're trying to spin it as if the whole detective division is not doing their job. And first of all, I never said that. I never said that the whole detective division doesn't do their job. But there was a lot of nonfeasance going on at that particular time, seemingly on a daily basis. And to me, it had just reached a boiling point where I'd finally gotten hot about it. And
you're referring to, and I just want to give a little context in case anyone's just joining us. You're referring to just the way things were handled at crime scenes, right? And who would take lead or who would do what, who's responsible for what, and and you've been having some issues, and maybe other things also between patrol and I guess detective units or detective divisions and stuff. And so you were just kind of, ready to just resolve this already. And you tried to resolve it without taking it to a step where you were actually complaining or making a formal complaint. That was never your intention.
It was almost, you could almost consider it a quasi-formal complaint, because I did say things in an email, which is on record forever, but it's not a supervisor's report. It's not an email to internal affairs. It's not, you're not complaining with the intention of trying to get anybody into trouble.
Right.
You're not looking for discipline.
Right.
I wasn't,
and now you're looking for punishment.
that email chain ended with that meeting in Joe Monaco's office being canceled, and Joe Monaco voluntarily sending out an email which reached my inbox saying that he had spoken to Internal Affairs, Justin Barbado, and Dan Campanini, Breadstick, about what I had written in the email complaining about Louis Venturino's voicemail, and that none of them wanted anything to do with it. Right. So these are all people in his chain of command, plus Internal Affairs, and none of them want anything to do with it. They're going to kick it back to Timmy Hodges to basically just take a piece of paper from me, a supervisor's report, and then they probably, I'm sure, told him to send it to the shredder once he got it. So I send Timmy Hodges a couple of emails basically explaining why I'm a little pissed off. And we read those. And he ends the entire email chain with a short email that says, "Thanks, Anthony. Let's sit down and discuss." That was on January 3rd. Okay, that's an email chain that lasted, went back and forth for a little bit from December 31st of 2019 to January 3rd of 2020. What we're going to talk about tonight is what happened in the couple of weeks that followed, probably about 3 weeks that followed. And I'm going to try to set it up so that next week we can hop right into the first really long email that I sent. It went out to Mike Koch. And that's one that before people sit down to watch the podcast, they should put their helmets on and buckle their seatbelts. So we'll try to end it so that we can pick up right there next week.
Sounds good.
So let's take a look at the emails that I sent you. The first one, I sent them to you in the order that we should look at them.
Right.
So the first, let me see, I have them here also. Okay, so the first one is going to be
that's the one with the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
IAD report, page 5.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Right, now this is page 5 of my internal, it's actually not a report, it's my internal affairs record. You have all different types of departmental records. As a member of the department, you have a medical record, you have a like an employee personnel record that has all different types of things in it. And you have an internal affairs record. Now, my internal affairs jacket is very small. Out of hundreds, if not 1,000 arrests that I made working as a cop in the 3rd and 4th precincts, I only had 3 people make complaints about me. Now, you might say, some people might think that's a lot. Wow, 3? That's nothing.
No, it's not.
3 is very, very little. When you're working in high crime areas, you often have to make arrests with people who just don't want to go to jail, and they fight with you. So
well, actually, I'm sorry not to cut you up, but there was a report actually in the Yonkers Tribune by Hezzy where he discussed some officers that had high amounts of incident reports and even lawsuits that the city had to pay out, but they still were promoted and then retired with these fat pensions. So you having 3 compared to these officers that were discussed, you're good. You have nothing basically.
Well, I had 3 complaints. That doesn't mean
complaints. Yeah.
Right. That doesn't mean that they're real. They're
right.
all unsubstantiated, all 3 of them. They were all complaints of excessive force, all people who just decided to fight with us, and we had to use force against them. No broken bones, no extended hospital stays or anything like that. But they don't like nothing crazy like that, but they just don't like, they don't like when the police fight back when they fight the police.
Right.
So they try to get you in trouble afterwards. They go down to internal affairs and they fill out a form. Internal Affairs investigates. They ask you what happened. You tell them, and that's it. The person has no serious injuries, usually no injuries at all,
Yeah.
And
Well, maybe they're
that's that.
thinking it's
There's
going to help
no.
them, right? It's going to help them with their case. If if they feel like they were roughed up or something, they report that
It could be
or
an
claim.
attorney telling them to do it, but it's
Yeah.
at the end of the day, usually internal affairs. If nothing wrong was done, internal affairs will come back and say, there's nothing here to suggest that you used excessive force given the circumstances, and that's what happened in all three cases um, of the complaints that were
Basically, they were
made against
unfounded,
me. Right, unsubstantiated is the term that internal
unsubstantiated,
affairs
right?
uses.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm thinking
my internal
CPS.
affairs record is 7 pages long. We can go through that at another time if you want. Nothing eventful in it. For our purposes here, the only page that was relevant was page 5. Now, if you look at that first big red box that I have, that I put,
Yep.
that is, it says right there, received May 19th, 2019. That was the incident with the troopers that we spoke about, right?
Right.
They made a complaint about me, even though I'm the one actually initially reported it to internal affairs. Whenever you have contact with an outside police department during an incident, you have to report that to internal affairs. So I did. And I said, look, I just got into an argument with these troopers. They might not be too happy about it. They might make a complaint about me.
But there was a whole thing to that. Just to have a little context, you had a gun with you, right? And then you took the gun apart or something. You left some of it in the car.
Yeah, it was a dispute that started with an outlaw biker gang.
Right. And I only say that because in my emails with Officer Wayne Simos, he mentioned that that part that you took the part of your gun, which was not supposed to be done, and you're not supposed to leave a piece of your gun or whatever in your car like that. And so that right there was a violation of the policy, police policy or something like that. I'm just being fair. I'm just being fair. No, I just want. Go ahead.
I don't want to get back going in on Wayne. Okay?
No, I'm not even about Wayne. It's about the incident. I'm just talking about that, and I'm just mentioning why I'm mentioning it.
Wayne has no idea what happened in that incident. Absolutely not. I never spoke to him about it.
Okay.
So whatever he's telling you, he heard, from wherever he heard it from. I don't really.
Well, I was wondering if that was also in the complaint that about the gun or anything like that. I mean, I didn't know if they had mentioned that.
We spoke about that on the third podcast. I told you I did disassemble my gun because they were telling me you can't have it in the place. They were telling me that after I was already in the place for a couple of hours. And they were doing it on orders from the bikers who just didn't want a cop in their bar. I didn't do anything that was against policy or illegal, anything.
So it wasn't in the complaint here because
except
you mentioned that
with
incident.
The troopers.
Okay, all right. So that's
so
all that was in that complaint.
With the troopers. So I decided not to make a big stink about that. I didn't think I really did anything wrong. I basically argued with them because, as a police supervisor, when I see cops handling something all wrong, and they're basically being sheepish in the face of, an organized crime element. Well, I don't care what they like. I mean,
but you're not their supervisor, also, right? You gotta know. They're gonna.
No, and that's why I was technically wrong, and I didn't fight it. Yeah. But there was nothing crazy that happened. There was no fist fights. It was just, you see there where it says days or hours suspended, five days.
Right?
Yeah, that's nonsense. I didn't lose it. I was not suspended for 1 day. I didn't lose a day of pay. No vacation.
And so why is it in there?
Because internal affairs is a bunch of idiots. That's why. The black shirts. Wait till we go through the actual reports pertaining to this situation. I was looking through them today. Oh my God. The hand job that wrote these reports up did me such a favor. I mean, he lies 10 times on every page. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, that's the problem they have when they try to set people up sometimes. I think they just lie so much and it's so excessive that it just makes it look ridiculous.
Yeah. I have the write-up somewhere. I didn't. It wasn't really too relevant to tonight's podcast, so I didn't bother scanning it, sending it to you. But I can do that at some point. I can send you the write-up, the notice of discipline or whatever, regarding that incident, which was the only blemish on my career that had nothing to do with work.
So you weren't suspended at all?
No, had nothing to do with my job performance. I wasn't suspended. Something that it was just an argument that I had with some other cops off duty.
So was this a mistake, or was it purposely done to just kind of make it bad?
I have no idea, but what I can tell you is on the write-up, it says 5 days, and then it's crossed out, and it just says notice of discipline. Now, this is something that the investigator, the black shirt down on Radford Street, wrote himself. I didn't lose anything. I was not punished in any way, except they, Mueller again. Heard that someone told him that the troopers were looking to write Yonkers cops on the Taconic State Parkway. Right. If I wasn't disciplined in some way, so he had to put a notice of discipline in my jacket.
Right.
Even though he didn't think it was a big deal at all.
He just wanted to protect other cops. He didn't want to have them harassed by state troopers.
And I wanted to fight the notice of discipline, and Mike Koch convinced me not to. What he said to me was kind of right. He says, remember, this is the Yonkers Police Department, bro. He goes, no one cares what you did. They only care about the stink that you make. You know, he said, Mueller got written up by Chucky Gardner for hosting a beer party or something in the precinct. And that was
Who was standing? He was standing by actually by Mueller at the funeral. I don't know if you saw that. Chuck Gardner.
Yeah, they were sitting next to each other in the pews. Yeah.
I didn't see him talk, but they were next to each other.
Yeah. All right, so that was that. Now you go down. In between that is just a random drug test. As cops, we get called for random drug tests, and I don't use drugs, so I pass. That's the stuff you see in the middle that's not boxed off. Now, go down to the second red box, and you'll see an administrative investigation opened on January 7th of 2020 at 11 a.m. Now, that's this whole situation. That's this blitzkrieg, as I called it, in several department emails.
Right. And a blitzkrieg, in case anyone doesn't know, is a Nazi dropping bombs like crazy on Europe, Great Britain, I believe, right? France, all of Europe.
Yeah, if you watch the History Channel, as I do often, it means lightning war.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
kind of like the shock and awe of the.
It's a hard and fast, sneaky attack, right? Shock and awe, right? That kind of a thing. And but I'm comparing all these idiots to Nazis, so it was fitting as far as the narrative that I was putting out there. You know what I mean? And you'll see as we get into some of the emails, I called Barbados Heinrich Himmler, and I referred to the third floor as the Third Reich. The third floor just means, you know, the brass and the police commissioner, they work up on the third floor of 104 South Broadway. That's where their offices are. So everybody calls them the third floor.
I have a question here for you. I think that you know, and you mentioned it before, but here, just curious, what does your union say about all this?
They put their middle finger up at me and told me to get lost. That's what they did.
And the union president is Mike Hanley, who called me last time a couple of weeks ago accidentally because you sent him a text accidentally. And he hasn't done anything. He actually said that he doesn't see anything that was done wrong here to you.
Right. So what's important in this box is the date, January 7th, 2020. Now, the incident happened on December 30th. I started sending out emails about it on December 31st. Emails went back and forth up until January 3rd, where I had asked the union to accompany me to this meeting where apparently Breadstick Campanini planned on hopping all over me for complaining about his unit, and he was going to start going into my personal business with my daughter's mother, who was one of the detectives at the scene. But he had already admitted what I wanted him to admit, so there was no point for me to go to this meeting. He made my case for me in the email that he sent. What I wanted to say at the meeting, he came out and admitted it ahead of time in the email. So why do I want to go to this email now and just get dogpiled? I have no interest. So I asked the union to go with me. Mueller finds out that I did that, and he says, oh, he wants to get the union involved? Okay. Forget the meeting. Let him take the union down to internal affairs. The significance of the date is that they did not intend on getting internal affairs involved initially. This was not, oh my God, look, this guy's so crazy. We have to assign internal affairs to, you know, find out what's going on. This was, since he pissed us off by sending the emails, okay, then pissed us off by asking for a meeting, which I didn't, but Hodges said that I did. For some reason, I don't know why he said that. Then I pissed him off even more by asking the union to come to the meeting. So now their blood is boiling. Now you have to get the black shirts involved. He's got to be retaliated against. Louis is a made guy. You can't complain about him. It's unacceptable. So now it's an internal affairs matter. One thing that I can't control, I can decide whether or not to show up at the meeting in the chief's office. What I can't control is getting called down to internal affairs. If I don't do that, if I don't go down there when they call me, then I'm in a whole lot of trouble. So you're between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
So the whole point of this, me showing this, is that 9 days passed between the initial incident, when they knew that I was cursing my head off at my daughter's mother about the detective division and how much some of the people down there suck. You know, 9 days passed between that night and when they opened up an official investigation with internal affairs. That's very important because let's go to the second thing I sent you, which was Breadstick and Goombas. No, that's 4 Hodges. Let's go back to number 2.
Just tell me when, because I'm going to.
Yeah, right there. That was it. You can see in the top left there. There's
January 8th.
Right. So
okay, yeah.
Now, this is the black shirt who conducted the investigation, synopsizing. Is that even a word? Yeah, giving a synopsis of the interviews of Breadstick Campanini and Louis Venturino down in Internal Affairs. Okay, they got called down in relation to an investigation into me. Now, what I love about this a whole lot is the initial email chain that we looked at a few podcasts ago shows that Internal Affairs wants nothing to do with what I said about someone who I outrank, Louis Venturino, leaving me a voicemail of an aggressive, confrontational, and threatening nature. They want nothing to do with it. But yet they call him down there anyway to put his 2 cents in about what I did that night. You would think that just for good measure, to make things look good, they might ask him something about the voicemail as well while he's down there. I mean, since he's down there anyway, right?
Right.
They didn't even do that. That's how
Now,
much.
why didn't they want him coming down? Why you said they didn't want him there?
No, the initial email chain said that Internal Affairs wants nothing to do with my complaint about Louis' voicemail. They didn't even know what he said to me yet. Okay. But what Mueller did was he says, okay, Louis is a made guy. Internal Affairs goes nowhere near him and what he did. But now we're going to send the same people who Joe Monaco consulted with, Barbado and them, the black shirts. We're going to send them after the guy who complained about Louis' voicemail, Anthony. And Louis has to go down there to tell what he knows about what Anthony did. But while he's there, we're not going to ask him any questions about the voicemail that he sent Anthony.
Right.
Right? Even though Anthony was the one who initially complained about this.
Right. But that's kind of like almost reminds me of when my cousin one time got arrested and his only charge was resisting arrest. And I'm like, but how can you resist the arrest if there's no charge for you to be arrested to begin with, right? So it's kind of like skipping a whole step. Stuff
like that doesn't happen anymore. That might have happened a lot. That had to be a while back.
That was a while back. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
So I'm telling you, they're all over that kind of stuff. They've been for a lot of years. One of the reforms that Chucky made was that he really increased the amount of scrutiny that sergeants make of those kinds of arrests, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, obstructing governmental administration.
Ties up resources also, and wastes his time.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So here we go. So the investigator who wrote up these reports, and he's a tremendous hand job in his own right. We could do a whole podcast about him. That's why I'm not saying his name. I'd rather just save it. This was a guy I actually liked and respected for a long time. And after he took part in this and the way he did this, the things he wrote in the reports, he shows his membership in the Spano crime family shines right through.
Yeah, so people surprised you, man.
This is his synopsis of Breadstick Campanini's interview on top. On Wednesday, January 8th, the undersigned supervisor interviewed Detective Captain Campanini at the Internal Affairs Office in regards to this incident. Present during the interview were a couple of people whose names I don't want to reveal because they were forced to participate in this. I know them personally. I have nothing against them. I like both of them, and I would just rather not include their names in the podcast. This interview was recorded on digital audio. Detective Captain Campanini related that on January 1st, 2020, he had a conversation with my daughter's mother, who informed him that she had several text messages saved between Lieutenant DiMaggio and herself that she wished to share with him. I guarantee you she didn't wish to share anything with him.
Right.
We've already been through that.
They wanted that, right.
Right. Detective Captain Campanini related that Detective Martinez considered the messages disparaging and harassing concerning several members of the detective division which were under his command. They were absolutely disparaging about several detectives. There's no denying that. Harassment, well, that's a matter of perspective. Who you asking? That Detective Captain Campanini related that after viewing the messages, he could understand the concern that Detective Martinez had, at which time he requested her to forward the messages to his department-issued cell phone. Breadstick then related that he downloaded the messages to a USB drive and notified Detective Captain Barbado of the Internal Affairs Division, the same Detective Captain Barbado who wants nothing to do with my complaint about Louis' voicemail of the incident. Now, this is very important at the end of this little synopsis. Detective Captain Campanini related that during their conversation, Detective Martinez hadn't articulated any concerns of fear for her safety. Then what the hell is she doing in the boss's office complaining about her personal relationship with her daughter's father?
Right.
Well, if it's not because she's concerned, it's because they're retaliating against me.
Right.
You see how dumb they are and the things they write in their own reports? within a month and a half of
So,
January 1st, right? She's going to be at the family court writing out a deposition that says she's concerned for her safety and the safety of her children and would like an order of protection. Okay, that's bad enough. Not to mention that if he had these text messages on January 1st, which this paragraph clearly says that he did, why are they not opening an investigation in Internal Affairs for another 6 days? The answer is because that was not originally the plan.
right.
Now, I guarantee you he didn't send those messages to Barbados until the 7th. But that time lapse is not described in this little paragraph here. Why would it be? It would cause a lot of problems, so you leave it out, obviously, right? Now,
Unless they
let's
messed
take a
up.
look. What we're going to read here in this next paragraph. This next description of Venturino's interview contains one of the most amazing things I've ever seen written in an official police department document. So let's take a look at that. I'm in the way on the bottom on my screen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you put us to the side?
Oh, well, you can't see the. Hold on.
I can't see.
Yeah. Hold on one second.
Right.
There we go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now, on Friday, January 10th, the undersigned supervisor interviewed Detective Sergeant Louis Venturino at the Internal Affairs Office in regards to this incident. Present during the interview was one of these guys that I like and don't want to mention, plus CLSA president in name only, Detective Sergeant Mike Koch. I say in name only because Mike Spanner was the real president of CLSA. Now, this interview was recorded on this audio. Detective Sergeant Venturino related that on December 30th, 2019, he worked the early tour. During the tour, he was made aware of an incident. Was that it? Did I not send it to you? Oh, dear. No, it should be in there somewhere. If it's not, I can still send it to you.
I don't know why it's not coming up. Hold on.
It says page 1 of 2 on the bottom, so you should have it. No, next one.
How does it go?
Scroll down, maybe.
Oh, that's probably what it is. There we
go.
Go.
There you go. Okay. Advised of an incident is 517 South Broadway where a firearm was recovered. Detective Sergeant Venturino related that the detectives, I redacted the other 2 detectives' names. There's no reason to drag their names,
right,
through the mud in public. Who responded, advising that there were 2 men engaged in a physical altercation. During the altercation, a firearm was dropped to the floor. It should be noted that it was later determined that the firearm was unloaded. At the time, the males fled the scene, leaving behind the firearm on the floor. Now, before I read this, let's start off here. Do you remember basically what you saw in the video? Do you remember?
Right, yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember that video.
Now read this. Now let's read this next sentence together. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Detective Sergeant Venturino related that based on the fact that there were no victims or suspects and no clear indication that an actual assault had occurred, the crime scene unit would collect the firearm, and basically that would be the end of it.
So they just didn't see the video. What they were looking at that big screen TV when they were all looking.
No, they weren't. That was part of my beef. The detectives didn't even look at it. They just decided it was dinner time and there aren't 3 people dead on the floor here.
Well, the detectives, right. But the other cops, the uniform officers did.
Yeah, we were there watching it.
Right.
So based on the fact, it was a fact that there were no victims or suspects.
Wow.
And there was no clear indication that an actual assault had occurred.
Wow.
Except for the 3-on-1 beatdown, the pistol whipping that occurred in the video. That might have been a little bit of an indication, but according to the Internal Affairs documents, there were no victims or suspects, according to Venturino says.
That's a blatant lie.
So that's why he didn't understand why I was so mad, because obviously nothing happened here. There were no victims or suspects and no indication of an assault. So, wow. I mean, this is almost 3 years later now, but you can imagine just seeing stuff like this. I'm sure you can be able to imagine why I was so hot that night.
Yeah.
It's just dereliction of duty like you can't even imagine. And it was constant. This wasn't just a one-off incident where I just blew my tie. It was I had reached a boiling point. Enough is enough. These overpaid, useless idiots.
I mean, they just blatantly lie. I mean, that's the thing that's upset me throughout my issue, is just that they just blatantly lie and don't care. They have no regard. They just feel like they can get away with anything.
write in official department documents. They just lie. They just make shit up.
Absolutely.
What does the rest say? Okay, he talks about Mike Farina, real good guy. Mike, I like him. He's the liaison to the ATF. What they do is they basically notify the ATF that they recovered a gun. They give the serial number. They see, what the deal is with the gun. People can read the rest of the stuff for themselves. So it says there is that Louis says that when he spoke to her, she told him that I said that a lieutenant does not respond to 10-1s. 10-1 means just call a certain place. If you get a 10-1 DD, that means call the detective division. So this idiot gets on the phone with the dispatcher and has her give me orders, not requests, orders to 10-1 the detective division. So I told her, I didn't say a lieutenant does not respond to 10-1s from a sergeant. I said, I don't respond to 10-1s from a sergeant. I didn't speak in general terms of a lieutenant. And basically what I was saying is I'm not talking to this idiot, so tell him to stop calling me.
Right. You're a lieutenant. He's subordinate type. Right. He's underneath.
Now, just in case Campanini didn't get the point across clearly enough, Venturino goes ahead and says the same thing. Venturino related that during his conversation with Detective Martinez, she appeared upset over the messages, but did not relate she was in fear for her safety at the time. So doesn't really give a reason as to why she's coughing up these text messages. Right? This is going to turn into a psychological thing. And I think I've been pretty clear about the reasons why Mueller decided to go that route. He needed to get me off the payroll, solve all kinds of problems for him.
Right.
But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't really the plan at the time. I think the plan was maybe get me to a doctor and have the doctor pull the standard nonsense where they put you at a desk. Like so many other people, like there are people there now at a desk.
Right. Right. And they kind of hold that over your head, right? Kind of like, you have that leverage over you.
In the past, there were cops who have done outrageous things and went straight to a desk. There was this one cop, I don't want to say his name because I promise not to anymore, but there was this one cop where this drunk old lady was getting in the way while some EMTs were trying to work on someone, and he just picked her up way up in the air and body slammed her face first into a marble floor. He went to a desk, straight to a desk. Then when he when he beat the charges, he got promoted to sergeant. There's a nice picture with Mike Spano promoting him to sergeant on the internet. But the standard place since time immemorial is you just go to a desk, and if you need to go to counseling before you can go back to work, you just do that. At one point, I spoke with Chucky after when all this was going on, and he actually said to me, he was retired at this point, and he goes, "Bro, go for the counseling. It's bullshit. It's standard. It's routine. It's just so the department can cover its ass." I said, "Chucky, I would in a heartbeat. They're not letting me because they want my rights up front. They want a waiver of my rights up front before I can do any of this stuff. It's not going to happen."
Yeah, but I mean, didn't he kind of know that though? I mean, I would think that Chucky Gardner would know that, that was the play.
No, because Chucky didn't do things like this to people. So City Hall never had to scramble and involve the attorneys and the doctors to try to put out a 5-alarm fire because Mayor Spano took union cash to give a Soviet grade what's the word I'm looking for? Flamethrower to a serial arsonist like John Mueller.
Yeah.
So it's John Mueller is an F up. And what he did in this situation at every step of the way was he effed up. And the reason he effed up is because effing up is what F ups are good at.
Yeah, it's like he kept digging himself into a deeper hole, right?
Right.
Trying to cover things up and try to make things right. I guess it just like quicksand. The more he moved, the further he sank.
So when the attorneys got involved, or even when Mueller himself, when I had shown him, all this stuff that I had proving what he was doing, he realized that it was so bad that there was no spinning it. You can't just spin it and try to attach another narrative to it. It's waiver of rights time. Get him to the doctor, get him failed, get him off the payroll, and tell him he can't even try to get his career back unless and until he waives all his rights in this agreement. Slap this agreement down in front of him and tell him he's either going to sign it or he's going to be out for a year and get fired under Article 73.
Right. So they try to put you in the worst position possible. Right. So
you're not getting back on the payroll with your rights intact. It's never going to happen. We're never going to fund a politically catastrophic lawsuit against ourselves.
So that's kind of a little advice that you're, good information for certain individuals out there who probably need that.
Right. So we can move on. What was the next thing?
Where you want to go to 3, right?
Yeah, 3 was 3.
Yep.
So 3 is this we went through already. I'm not going to read it out loud. It's just an email. The same day, January 7th, that they officially opened up an internal affairs investigation after the meeting had been canceled. All this stuff, everybody's pissed off. They decide they better at least put on a dog and pony show, trying to make it look like they're addressing my complaint about Louis Venturino, about his voicemail. So we don't have to read that again. We read it a few podcasts ago, and it's basically just Campanini telling me that he's going to send Louis' supervisor, Detective Lieutenant Anthony Chiarella, who's Louis' dear friend, to meet with me. He's going to coordinate and have him meet with me, hear the voicemail. So in other words, he wants me to put it to his phone, put it to his ear, the phone, and play the voicemail for him. I said, okay, no problem. Right. Now, yeah, you can go to the next one.
Next, Hodges.
Yeah. Now, there should be one in between this. Did I not send it to you? It's called. It's a document. It's a document called.
I don't know why it skips.
Yeah, appointment with Hodges.
1 second. I just don't want to show the.
I'm with you.
No, I don't got.
I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it that way.
4. Oh, 4. Yeah, you 4, right? No, 5. 5. What number are we going to?
No,
4
it should be the number 4 at the earliest. Let me see. I can tell you what number it is.
This is 4.
Yeah, it's number 4. Right, that's 4. Okay.
Right.
So this is an email from Hodges. I don't even know. Is it even politically correct to say secretary anymore? I don't know. One of his office work, someone who worked in his office, a cop who worked for him, under him, handled a lot of his administrative work. And this is from her. It's basically just an appointment. I don't remember what day it was sent on. I should say it there. But it doesn't.
Wednesday, January 8th, 2020.
No, that's not the date it was sent. That was the date that she's giving me an appointment to come up to the chief's office and talk to him. So I met with him on January 8th at 10 o'clock in the morning in his big office up on the 3rd floor. I had my Class A uniform on, or I didn't have the jacket, but I had my white shirt. He was wearing the same. And I go in, and he sits me down at a table in the center of his office, just me and him sitting right across from each other. There's a very small table. And he's whispering. He goes, Anthony, before we start talking about this, what happened at the crime scene and everything, he goes, stop texting her.
Yeah.
I said, Chief, I can't stop texting her. She's my daughter's mother. I mean, really, it's the best way that we communicate. We don't communicate well talking to each other on the phone. She's nasty. I guess she's nasty. She gets me nasty. We're nasty to each other. I have to text her. He goes, all right, well, just know they're going through her phone on a daily basis, he tells me. So whatever you say to her today, tomorrow, they're going to see it. Now he knows her. He knows that the way I talk to her is the same way that she talks to me, which is actually what I said to him. Well, like I said, I think at one point, all the people who know her, they don't ask me why I interact with her the way that they do. And he's one of them. So he says to me, what he didn't tell me, which I wish he would have told me, was that, I think he didn't even know, which is the only reason he probably didn't tell me, is that Internal Affairs, by this point, had already opened up an official investigation a day earlier. So when he told me that they're going through her phone and they're talking about, it's fucked up the way you talk to her, and they think you got psychological problems, and I didn't realize he might have been trying to tell me, wink, wink,
right,
this is in gear, this is going
right.
So what I said to him was, I don't think he knew, because what I said to him was, I said, Chief, they can't be that dumb. I mean, I played the voicemail for him. I still have it in my phone the same way I had it saved in his office that day. I'm going to show.
Well, when he said that they're going through her phone, did that, and I know you said you can't stop texting her, but at that point, just because they were going through her phone, didn't that make you want to stop texting? I mean,
No, because she's my daughter's mother. I said they're never gonna get away with this. I mean, first of all, he warned me of retaliation in this nasty voicemail that they didn't even want to hear. And second of all, I said to him, if they're going through her phone, they can clearly see that she talks to me just as nastily as I talk to her. It's a two-way, combative, argumentative relationship. No violence or anything like that, but we just yell at each other a lot. We curse at each other. We do
Right,
it
but
still.
it's just stuff that they could use against you, and it's more of a like
Sure. If
fire
they
that
want to,
you have to
right.
put out.
Right. But I just figure they can't be that dumb. I mean, I know Mueller's insane. Everyone knows, but he's not retarded. He's not that dumb. You know what I mean? He's got to know this is never going to fly. So I didn't really take it that seriously. I got to be honest with you. I was just like, yeah, whatever. I never saw an internal affairs visit coming. Especially after I have an email from Monaco basically saying that IED wants nothing to do with, and I know how the department works. I know he's a made guy and all that stuff, but I don't know. I just didn't think Mueller was this much of a screwball. But
I mean, it said in the Montero though, in the Montero lawsuit, right? We've mentioned that he's capable of things like this.
Right, but he was the commissioner now, so everything he did with Montero, he did to make sure that Keith Olson stayed the PBA president, because like I said, Keith Olson being the PBA president was Mueller's ticket to becoming the police commissioner. Spano didn't pick Mueller. Keith Olson picked Mueller. The Spanos sold Keith Olson the pick. All that money going up to ESP, like you've done these shows on.
Right. Empire Strategic Planning. They
pay to play. He's paying to have his way in the department.
Right.
Including making his complete screwball of a friend the police commissioner for a brief period of time, thank God. But that was the way it worked out. Now I showed Hodges. I said, Chief, look. I said, look how we're laughing. I'm laughing with him. I said, look how I have the voicemail stored. Right? I don't know if you guys can see that. See that second one?
Hold on.
Can't see it.
There you go. Show it again.
It says Venturino being an asshole. That's the note. That's the title. I have the voicemail stored under in the phone. And I show it to Hodges and he's laughing. And he goes, "Oh, it's good."
So you're sitting with Tim Hodges, and you guys are meeting, and he's telling you this, and so what are you thinking? I mean, what's he trying? What else is he saying?
Then we started talking about the incident. And he goes, "This is good. You're saying that this happens a lot." He goes, "This is a good example. Do you have any others?" We started talking about some things, and basically the way that the meeting ended was, I asked for. See, the way my mindset works is if you're going to make a stink about something, you better try to take steps to try to fix it, right? That was at least the way I always thought of things. That was sort of the military mindset that was, ingrained in me as a younger man in the Air Force. Right. If you see something wrong, you should do something to try to fix it. So I said to him, look at this policy, I told him. I think we showed the policy on a previous podcast. It's almost 30 years old. I mean, this podcast, this policy, was written before people even were able to communicate with each other very easily from the position that they're already in. Right. Before cell phones, before pagers.
Yeah.
The policy basically says that the patrol lieutenant makes all the decisions, and we see how that works out. The detectives do whatever they want anyway. So why don't we revise the policy to give the detective sergeant a little more authority about what his detectives
what about like the patrol lieutenants, right? Like you were having authority over a detective sergeant, because at the end of the day, he's still a sergeant, right?
Well, that's already. I mean, that's just basic and inherent to the.
But it seemed like he didn't have that. And I know because he feel like he's part of that, undisclosed or hidden ranking system, but he still, didn't seem like he had any respect. Like he didn't even consider it. That you outranked
bitter,
him.
lush, drunk hairbag. He's a loser. I mean, like I said, you wouldn't pee on the guy if he was on fire. A handful of people would. You'd have to call one of them up to come put it out, because nobody likes the guy. Genuinely, nobody likes him. I know people have told you that about me, but that's false. Okay.
Well, you is false, with him is forever.
But you've also heard people say the contrary about me.
No, I have. Yeah, I have.
Support me and whatnot.
I mean, and to be honest,
right.
People that don't like you obviously would say that about you, right?
Right. So, so it was, Chief, why don't we put it together, a little committee? I have no delusions this is actually going to happen, but I got to try because I made a stink. So, Chief, why don't we get a couple of detective sergeants and a couple of patrol bosses, and why don't we just sit around at the table and come up with a better policy? Because the policy, which was written in 1993, basically says that the lieutenant calls all the shots. Now, they made it simple like that because they couldn't communicate with each other back then like we can now. So if the detective sergeant wants more say in what his detectives are going to do at a crime scene, maybe that's the right way to do it, but let's put something in the policy basically saying, okay, if there's a dispute, the detective sergeant calls the lieutenant, Now, Louis will say, well, that's what I was trying to do, but he tried to do it after he already told them to go get lost.
Right.
Which to me was no good. That's what I was complaining about. They left me holding the bag looking like an idiot at a crime scene for the umpteenth time. So he says, fine, go ahead, do that. You want to do that? Even if you got to spend a couple of bucks, pay people on overtime, even if you got to do that, you just run it by me. No problem. So in the days that followed, I spent some time calling people. John Morello. I called Darrell Benjamin. I called Tommy Cleary. I think I called Kenny Lacey. I called a couple of people, patrol bosses and detective bosses. I said, listen, Hodges gave me the green light on this thing. Maybe we could do a policy revision, send something up to the police commissioner. Now, meanwhile, they're plotting my demise behind my back. I have no idea. Yeah. I'm bouncing between doing this at work, going to spend time by my grandfather's side on his deathbed, right? And in the next couple of documents that I sent you.
Now, didn't you, being in the police department for as long as you've been, did you really think that you would be able to just present this policy change idea and that it would just, No,
not to John Mueller, no.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I don't see that happening. Just knowing the city of Yonkers anyway, just how things happen.
If it was Chucky, it might have been something different. But then again, if it was Chucky, Louis Venturino never leaves me that voicemail.
Right.
Never even thinks about it.
Right.
So, people watching this podcast, I don't need to read this email. They can pause it and read it. It's basically just me reaching out to Detective Lieutenant John Morello, who was an incoming detective lieutenant. He was replacing the outgoing Anthony Chiarella, who was about to leave, about to retire. John was coming in. John got a lot of steam. The Morellos, him and his two brothers, they all got a lot of steam. They're all good guys. They're actually distant cousins of mine on my grandmother's side. I don't remember how, but anyway, they're all good guys. I sent him this email. I said, look, Hodges gave me the green light on this thing. Would you like to be a part of it? And I give him some of the reasons why, some of the background. Now, people can read that for themselves. We don't got to go through it. The next email, I follow up with Hodges. No. Yeah, okay. I follow up with Hodges. That email is a couple of pages long, and I'm trying to follow up with him. Now, there's a hidden reason while I'm continuing to email Hodges. I want to see what I'm going to get back from him, because I know that if he goes silent, that means Mueller got involved and told him to stop. You know what I mean?
Right.
After I sent this email, he did go silent. So I knew now Mueller's involved. Also, I got a call from John Morello, and he tells me, Joe Monaco, who's the chief of the Investigations Bureau, he didn't know that Chief Hodges gave you the go-ahead to do that. So if we're going to do it, Monaco would like to be involved in picking the people from his own bureau that are going to participate. So now I'm really getting bullshitted, because now I'm laughing. Oh, Monaco wants to have a hand in this, does he? No, he doesn't. The chiefs don't make those kind of decisions, unless they get permission from up above. And Mueller's not going to give that kind of permission, neither is Spano. Right. The chiefs it's a ceremonial position these days. They don't do a whole lot. Neither does the commissioner, for that matter, because Johnny and Lenny are the ones who really run the department.
What does a commissioner do these days at the Yonkers Police Department? They don't do much.
Yeah, you got me. They do whatever the mayor tells them to do, really. I mean,
And so you say John Spano runs the police department. That's what I've heard also before. He's the real commissioner.
John and Lenny's a retired sergeant in Westchester County Police Department. The two of them. So if you want to scroll down, just so people can maybe pause it, I'm not going to read it. It's long, but people can pause it and read it for themselves. And it's basically me making my case. Trying to see what I get back from him, if anything. Now, he didn't respond to this email, which told me that Mueller was now putting the kibosh on this little policy revision committee plan.
Right.
Which I fully expected. And now it's happening. So now I'm just waiting to hear what's going to be next. This email was sent on the morning of January 10th. Later in the day, I'm up in my house in Dutchess County. I'm doing renovation work, and my phone goes off. I get a text from Chiarella. Chiarella is Venturino's lieutenant down at the detective division. He's a media supervisor. Okay. Hey, Ann, it's Chia. Campany wants me to meet you and listen to Louis' voicemail. Let me know when it's good for you. Thanks. Now, these morons obviously don't realize that I could just send this voicemail out however I want.
Right.
So I say, I'm off until Tuesday late tour. That here, it should say late tour, not late here. So I say, I'm off until Tuesday late tour. Here you go. And I text him the file. Right. Okay, thanks, Aunt. Probably was blown away by the fact that I could even do that. And I say, you're welcome, she. Now, this message right there on the top is very important. Okay. I'm going to minimally counsel him. So now what he's telling me is, okay, I heard this voicemail. I heard him cursing his head off at you, saying you want to play this game, you're going to lose. I don't give an F about you. He's acknowledging your rank, which means you shouldn't even be leaving this voicemail. But what are you going to do? You're going to minimally counsel him, which basically means you're going to tell him, don't do that anymore.
Right. Right.
And I'd be surprised if he even did that. All right. Now, he's going to be minimally counseled, but within a matter of weeks, I'm going to be called down to internal affairs to answer for my role.
Because you're not a part of that crew.
I'm not a made guy. So now,
not a made man.
Now I'm getting cute with Chiarella. I understand. I'm just looking for somebody to put a leash on him. Yeah, right. They're going to put a leash on Goomba. He's a made guy. You don't put leashes on made guys. They do whatever they want.
So he's reading that like this guy right here. He knows what you know.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep you posted. And I say, thanks. I'm trying to take constructive measures to fix this whole thing. I didn't really go into too much detail. And he doesn't respond. Okay. That's the 10th. The next day, January 11th, my grandfather dies. When a relative that close dies, the department gives you a total of 6 days off from work. That includes your days off and any days that you were scheduled to work. They give you 6 days in a row. It's called DIF leave, death in family leave. You get a little bit of time to grieve. In really tragic cases where it's somebody very, very close, like a parent or, God forbid, a child, people will pick up your slack and they'll work your tours for you so that you can spend time out with your family, months if need be, and then come back to work when you're ready. So my grandfather dies on January 11th, and I'm out of work for the better part of a week. I think we touched on it on a previous podcast. At his funeral, Knucklehead Smith and all the chiefs and a lot of people were there. My grandfather was very well known, very beloved. Real old school guy. He was 90 years old. People came out of the woodworks to be at his funeral. Usually, a lot of times when people are 90 years old, by the time they die, most of their friends have died.
Right.
So the funerals are very small. There was a lot of people there. Okay. Now, the clown-faced creep, John Muller himself, was there. And I see him outside the funeral. I see him on the steps of Sacred Heart Church talking to somebody. And I said to myself, I gotta talk to this guy. I gotta see what his eyes tell me about what he's planning. So I did that. And boy, did his eyes tell me something. Okay. We spoke about that on a previous podcast, so I'm not going to go too much into it. When I go back to work, it was, I don't know, this 18th, 19th, something like that. I work a whole set, a 4-day set at work. Now, meanwhile, he's got all these psychological concerns about me, and I'm back at work on the street like nothing ever happened. Ha just told me that he had psychological concerns about my psychological well-being because of these, and Ha just told me the word he uses, provocative text messages that I sent to V. And when I come back to work after my grandfather dies, I go right back to the street, which tells me, should tell everybody that whatever he was saying, it was all smoke and mirrors. He did not have any real concerns about my psychological whatever, because if he did, I wouldn't be back on the street. That's automatic. Standard operating procedure. So I go back to work and I work a set. And I think towards the end of that set, or right before I'm about to go back in for my next set, I get an email from Charlie Walker. Well, is that for me or for Freddie?
I don't know.
Love you too, pal.
Both of us.
And you can show that email. I think we might have showed it briefly on a previous podcast. It's the one where the investigator, Charlie Walker, is basically just telling me that I got to go down to Internal Affairs on the 28th of January in relation to this incident. He tells me that I'm the subject of the investigation. I was wondering, who's this about? Me, it's about Louis. I knew, but I just wanted him to confirm it in the email. And I let him know that I'm going to be coming with an attorney. You can tell Mike Koch, who was courtesy copied on the email, you can stop courtesy copying him because he's not coming anywhere near this one. Can you find it? The email?
I'm looking now.
It's number. They're numbered.
Oh, you gave it. That's one you just sent. I thought you meant it was an old email.
Oh no, yeah, I included it in
you.
this email
I
as
got
well.
you. I got you.
It's number 8.
Number 8. No, I don't have a number 8. It goes up to 7.
Oh, in the next email. It's in the next email that I sent you.
I got you.
You know, people watching this, I thank you for sticking with me. I know this is some of the more boring stuff, but it's important to see it and to understand the order that things happened in, so that you can understand what comes later. I got to get through it, and then next week we're gonna get into some new stuff. So okay, this is the email where he's telling me I got to come down. We've been through it before. People can pause it, read what's in those boxes. If you scroll down, I basically tell him, Mike Koch is not to have anything to do with this, and I'm coming down with an attorney.
Charlie Walker. Charles Walker. Who's that?
Charlie Walker is he's a member of the Spano crime family. He's in very tight with them, but he really has them. He has them eating out of his palm in a very unique kind of way. And if it's all right with you, that's something I'd like to talk about on a later podcast. Very
is he white or black? Is he white or black?
I've been told that he's both. Actually, I've been told that he's half and half.
What does he look like? If you look,
not that it matters. Oh no, he's black. I mean,
okay, all right. So I'm just trying to know if that's the same guy I'm thinking about.
He's the president of the Westchester Guardians, which is
that's him. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that's Charlie. Right, you got the right guy. So brief little email chain, and I let him know. Relieve Detective Sergeant Koch from any further involvement in the matter. Okay. He tells me that he's required to notify the union. And I tell him, okay, well then notify my precinct rep if that's the case. She was a person I trusted.
Right.
And
so what is his role actually in this again, Charlie?
He's an internal affairs investigator.
Okay.
He was a black shirt, and he was a new one at the time. He hadn't been down there very long.
I got you. All right.
And he made a lot of mistakes typing up the reports, so his inexperience.
I saw crime scene unit here. That's why I was confused there. It's a Detective Sergeant Charles Walker, crime scene unit.
Oh yeah, that he was there before that. He just hadn't changed his automatic signature yet, right? So yeah, we can move on from that one. What was the 9th thing I gave you? That was, I believe, more texts from Chiarella. These are interesting, right? Now, this is, I think, the 23rd. I don't know why the date is cut off up there, but I basically say to him, Chi, that's what we all called him. Real likable guy. I said, Chi, I thought you were going to counsel this guy in-house. He said he was going to minimally counsel him.
Right.
I thought you were going to counsel him in-house. So why am I getting called down to IED next week? Now, I already knew. Timmy Hodges already told me what was going on. He didn't tell me that they had actually opened an internal affairs investigation, but he told me what was going on, so I knew what was going on when I got called down there. He said, I have no idea. I've been out of the loop. Morello's taking over. You want me to find out? I said, okay, I know it's about that, because Charlie Walker put the CNR, which basically means the job number from the South Broadway incident, in the email. But Joe Mock, the chief, said that he spoke to IED and that they declined to investigate the voicemail, which was fine with me. I wasn't looking to get anybody in trouble. So now I'm wondering what I'm being called down there for. Yeah, if you could find out for me, I'd really appreciate it, man. He says, all right, I'll hit you up tomorrow. All right, thanks. And he gives me a thumbs up. Now, 2 days later, the next day I would send some interesting emails to Mike Koch. But 2 days later, he gets back to me. And camp, meaning breadstick, was off. And Barbado just got back from Florida. Now, this is one of the most interesting lines you'll ever see. Camp wouldn't discuss with me on the phone. Well, who doesn't want to talk about things on the phone? People who are involved in some shit that they shouldn't be doing, right? People who are so nervous about getting caught, what they're doing, that they're worried that in the 1 in a million chance that someone has their phone tapped.
Or if you're speaking about out against the city of Yonkers and you're worried about your phone being tapped and and you
Right. But the bottom line is it's usually, gangsters or
I got you.
terrorists
I got you.
that don't want to talk on the phone. So if what you were doing was on the level, was on the up and up, you'd have no problem talking about it on the telephone.
Right.
That's a little telling to me. Right?
I mean,
So
but
I
it
tell
could be a
them,
lot of things though. That's just would be hard to kind of just prove anything really.
cops know what it means. All the cops watching this right now, they know why.
Right.
He didn't want to talk about it on the phone. So I say, now, this is 2 days after he and I had texted. I said, no need. Gee, I already know what it's all about. Meanwhile, I knew the whole time. So he wouldn't discuss it on the phone because the fix is in. Thanks for trying, though. And the rest is just, oh, okay, I'd like to come to your retirement party, but probably a bad idea, so I won't. But good luck. I tell him, I don't know why. Oh, yeah, congrats and good luck. I put it on the side there in a little blue box. I continued the last text message. So now Chiarella is telling me in a text message that Camp refuses to talk about the situation on the phone, even though they're dear friends. He knows Chiarella's not recording him or anything like that. He's worried about a wiretap. Now, the last thing I sent you, and we can leave off here, this will lead us right into a lot of fun next week. The last thing is number 10. It's called Mike Emails 1 and 2. Yeah, okay, that's it. So in the emails that Charlie Walker had sent me, he told me that if I want the president of the CLSA, Mike Koch, to no longer be involved, I have to tell him myself. So that's what I do in that top email, very short. Okay, I say, Mike, please sit this one out on Tuesday morning. I will either go alone or with outside counsel. Thank you, which means even if I can't find an attorney in time, I'll go alone. You ain't coming. Right? Audio, Fred.
No, I'm listening though to you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I'm just listening.
So he responds back to me, and I mean, this guy's the union president. If you want to pay your own attorney to go down to internal affairs, that's a good thing.
Right.
Why is it
I
not
was
a good
reading
thing?
the second part. That's why I was kind of
Why is it not a good thing for Mike Koch? Because now Mueller is about to lose control of the situation.
Right.
Because he has Mike Koch in his pocket. So Mike Koch says to me, I'd have to advise against that. Oh, you're an advisor now, are you?
Right. He's advising you here, but he hasn't been advising you any other time.
Advising me based on what expertise? I thought you were just a moron working for the Spanos. You're advising me? Okay, so you're advising me against that. You're not under any kind of criminal investigation that will require an attorney. Well, there are employment attorneys too. When you know that someone's coming after your job. You should, however, have union representation. I'm here and available if you change your mind. Now, I put in that box up there, what kind of police union president advises a member not to bring an attorney to internal affairs? The answer is a union president that is following instructions from management to do so because he has been promised a transfer to the overtime-rich traffic unit, okay? Bags of cash are not the bribes anymore. It's a lucrative position within the department.
That's a prestigious unit, right?
Yeah, that's the unit that Furby worked in.
Right.
Mike Koch was Furby's commanding officer. Furby was the sergeant, and you see, Furby wasn't a detective sergeant. A lot of times they do that posthumously.
Right. It was posthum. Yeah.
Right. So Koch was his boss, and that was his payoff for doing everything the Spanos and Mueller wanted him to do, including help set me up. So there's no way I was going down with him. Now, there was a third email in this little brief chain. The first two are very short. The third one is very, very long. And I had a lot of fun writing it. And that's where we'll start off next week.
Sounds good. Anthony, that's a lot. We've been what number is this? What number? We've been doing a lot of these podcasts and just going through your entire case and stuff like that and what happened to you and just how detailed it is. And it's important. And in a way, that's kind of what I'm doing with my issue as well. you know, and this is important because the people need to see this stuff, right? And you know, you said some of this stuff is, you know, may not be the exciting stuff, and sometimes when I talk about things too, I think about that too. But it's important. Sometimes it's the most important stuff or the more important stuff, you know, that people need to see. And so what you're showing here should be eye-opening to a lot of people, and if it's not already. And so, you know, it's just incredible what's going on here in the city of Yonkers. And this is why I speak out, folks. You know, not just Anthony, there's a lot of people, but I'm glad that Anthony, you're speaking out because, you know, you're willing to put your stuff out there and yourself out there as I am, which is very important.
Absolutely.
What
so, I'm going to do.
Thank you.
I'm going to do, just for good measure, we can end the podcast with, if you don't mind, the voicemail again. What do you think? Fred?
Did you just resend it? Is that what you just did?
Yeah, I just resent it.
Okay.
Did you get it?
Let me refresh this. A quick voicemail, yeah.
You have the audio on?
Can you hear it?
No. Trouble playing it?
No, just I was listening to it. I can hear it. That's what I don't like because I can hear something even when it's not playing to you guys, and that throws me off. Here you go. You hear it?
First saved voice message. Sent yesterday, Monday, December 30th at 10:11 p.m. Duration 35 seconds. Hey, listen, I know you're a lieutenant, but you have a problem with the detectives, you call detective sergeant. If you have a problem with that, you call detective lieutenant. I don't know who the fuck you think you are, but you want to play this game, you're going to lose it. I'll tell you right now. I don't know who the fuck you think you are. Save this message and play to whoever you want. Okay? There's a chain of command. If you have an issue with a sergeant, you call my lieutenant. If you have an issue with a detective, you call the sergeant. Don't answer my phone call. I don't give a fuck about you. Wake up. End of message.
Just for people who haven't maybe watched the earlier podcasts and needed to hear it again. That's all.
And that was Detective Sergeant Lou Venturino, Yonkers Police Department, who has since retired, correct?
Yeah.
Even
retired the same day as Mueller.
And you are a lieutenant, so you outrank him. But obviously, there's a whole nother ranking system that certain individuals, and maybe, you know, they have all since retired, maybe there's a few left that were operating under that outrank you no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason, and, you know, this... our buddy Danny Sullivan, he has a pretty heavy complaint against Venturino as well, saying Venturino planted drugs on him.
Who in here isn't using their real name to comment?
Probably a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there he is Danny. You know, he had a pretty heavy complaint against Venturino himself, basically saying that Venturino planted drugs on him a lot of years ago. He only recently got his hands on the toxicology report from the hospital that night, showing that he didn't swallow any drugs, as Louis said he did. Now he brought that to the Internal Affairs Division's attention a little over 2 years ago, and it's only now being investigated in the last few months. You know why? Because Venturino retired the same day Mueller did back in April. So Mueller had the black shirts back off on conducting that investigation until Louis retired. Because once Louis retires, he's no longer answerable to Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs doesn't investigate retired cops. They investigate active cops. So once he's retired, Internal Affairs can only investigate him to a certain extent. They can't compel him to come talk to them anymore. So the investigation dies.
So, you know, we should maybe you want to talk to Danny. Danny, maybe you want to speak to Anthony about coming on the show. And you could be on, Anthony, also, because you would be a better individual to maybe answer questions that Danny may have about his case, because I know he wants to talk about it, and I think that we can have all three of us, I should say, could be on here Anthony, if you have the microphone and stuff like that, or you don't even need a microphone really, you could call in really, but if you have a camera and you have the microphone and you want to come on, Anthony, we can send you the link and we'll get on and we'll talk about your case. And Anthony could be on there. That way he'll give you his, expert. I mean, he's a lieutenant, 15 years. I would imagine he has some input that would be valuable to you. So if you were to do that, discuss it, and I'm always ready.
We could talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
People watching, if you haven't already followed Freddy, then do that, because he puts out a lot of good stuff. I know there are cops who definitely watch the podcast that I'm on, but
cops say hello to me, man. They shout me out. I was coming out the courthouse, not because I was in trouble. I was there for something else. But they acknowledge me. Say, hey, Freddie, and they say basement politics. So I support police, and some people may not like that. I've had people say, oh, you support. Listen, I support the cops, man. I have to, right? And I believe in law and order. I absolutely do. And and that's just how I am. And I'm not saying that all cops are good, but that's everywhere. That's just life.
Yeah,
right?
This thing with Danny, with Louis Venturino putting drugs on him, that was,
I believe that.
That was in 2003. That was, as I said, and I'll keep saying, in the pre-Chucky era. Remember, I distinguished between the pre-Chucky era, the Chucky era itself, his 8 years, and then everything since him I call the post-Chucky era. Louis Venturino was a dinosaur of a cop. From, he got on probably in the early 90s at the latest. It was a whole different police culture, a whole different way of doing things. And the pieces of shit like him who were around, there weren't even many of them left when I got on the job. They're all gone.
But
you're not looking at cops like, when you see cops out in the street these days, Yonkers cops, you're not looking at people like Louis Venturino. I'm telling you,
I believe that. I believe Danny, just because I know people that have that happen to them, and I know that is for a fact that it had, and so I believe that. And again, it's not all cops, but it might have even been the same guy. Who knows? It might have been Lou Venturino. I don't even know. It could have been. I'm not saying it was, but I'm saying that I know people that it's happened to, had drugs planted on, have been beat up, and just not even arrested. I used to take people to the pier back in the day before they had the Xavier's there. Right before Xavier 2.0 was there and all that stuff the Dolphin, go rough them up a little bit, leave them there, get up out of there.
You're talking about a lot of years ago, man. Stuff like that was going on when I got on. I wouldn't know about it.
I'm from Yonkers, man. I grew up not too far from the pier, so I remember
how
when
old
the
are
pier
you,
had
nothing.
nothing.
How old you are, man?
I'm getting up there, man. I get up there, but I remember the pier. Well, I'll tell you offline. I remember when the pier was just homeless people who were grilling, fishing for crabs with the crab cages, and then they would grill them there with their little portable grills, and they'd eat crabs and stuff right there. There was no Dolphin, no Xavier's, no buildings, nothing. I mean, Hurricane Hugo, we went down there and got stuck in a car.
You said a few podcasts ago that you had gone to see your grandmother, and I mean, if your grandma's still around, you can't be that old.
My grandmother is 70-something years old. 80, maybe like 80-something years old.
Okay.
No, I'm definitely I'm in my 40s, so I've seen a little bit of the late 80s. I remember that, the late 80s and stuff like that, and early 90s. Yonkers, it's weird because Yonkers, it was kind of, rough, but it seems like it's a different rough these days, right? It seems like it's a more like, we still seem happy back then, right? And now it's like dreary, I don't know. It's very weird. Like, even we still had a sense of community, right? Even though we were poor and there might have been some issues here and there. But like nowadays, like you got random shootings and all these random, random stuff. Back then, it was kind of, more, you knew the person. It was some beef with the neighbor or whatever. But now it's just a bunch of crazy different, even Getty Square didn't look as bad as it looks now, back in the 90s, to me anyway. Maybe early 80s, late 80s, crack and all that one. Really, really big. But in the 90s, I would go to Getty Square. My grandmother, we walked through there. I didn't see the amount of homeless. I guess they were all hanging out at the pier. Now they can't go to the pier, so they hang out at Getty Square. But it just seemed different. I don't know. Seemed different. It just seems a lot worse now. I don't know. I mean, it's good, but it's bad. I don't know. It's maybe I don't know what I'm saying. But anyway, folks, maybe Danny, you guys could talk about that and set that up. That'd be kind of interesting too. But anyway, folks, I'm Freddy Vazquez. That's Anthony DiMaggio. Anything else you want to say, Anthony, before we get offline here? I'm going to go have some ice cream. Haagen-Dazs. Chocolate.
No, I just tell people watching, to to follow you, and it's very simple. You just click the follow button on the Basement Politics page and subscribe to his YouTube page. Right?
And the Instagram page too, because I do a lot of like videos there that I edit and stuff and create cool little music things too that I don't often put on Facebook. So you'll see different stuff there that you don't see on Facebook. And yeah, I was just thinking that, Anthony. He says it's hard for a cop to admit another cop will do something like that. And I was just thinking that, and the fact that you're saying that, you know, obviously, you know, people got to think, damn, this shit is real. You know, some people may be like,
like
oh,
I said,
cop
you
can't do that.
Louis Venturino, he really is a piece of shit. He's not one of us. He's not a cop. He's a moron who doesn't. He wasn't even a good cop. He didn't think that there were victims or suspects or an assault, any indications of an assault during that incident, where we clearly saw the video that there were.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who was a zero of a cop, and he made $250,000 a year for his last 3 or 4 years to sit and drink at his buddy's jewelry store. They have a a Nestle water jug full of Tito's vodka on a dispenser. It's just the guy was, it was like, please.
But how do you think, just putting that on the police report, right, that there wasn't a victim, there wasn't a suspect, there was no assault that took place. It was just, having the video. Did he not see the video? Did he forget about it, or he just didn't care? I mean,
probably some combination of all three. I mean, who knows?
Because I was trying to actually play the video, but and maybe we'll do that next time. But it's obviously there was all that he said wasn't there. It's all there. I mean,
go
that's
back and watch the 7th podcast. I'm wearing during that podcast. If you want to go to YouTube and scroll through the podcast or whatever, there's the link. It has a picture of the beginning.
You can go watch the podcast. Watch the crime scene, and I put a tag in it. Watch the whole podcast, guys. You should.
I'm wearing a long sleeve, a solid orange shirt, long sleeves, and you can see me right in the picture.
I put in the caption and stuff about the crime scene. So when you see that, that's the podcast. But it's just the fact that he would just do that when it's blatant, obvious. There's a video and everything. Kind of reminds me of that guy you call Blade. They're saying that wasn't a guy. Like, got you on video, guy.
Well, when you're immune to consequences, you don't really care about lying in reports. And you don't care about any of it. You know what I mean?
Well, that is, I guess, if anything that people should really be taking from a lot of the stuff that you're talking about and that I'm talking about is that it's very blatant. It's they're making mistakes. That's how careless they are, because they feel that they're so immune and they've gotten away with it for so long that that's just another.
And that was not even his last. His last dust up with the patrol supervisor. About a year and a half later, I got word from a good source, and I later confirmed it, that he was having another one of these disputes with a patrol sergeant. This time, this dispute was actually taking place in the detective division. He grabbed the guy by the shirt, pinned him against the wall, told him he would kick his fucking ass, and the only thing that stopped him is that the patrol supervisor is a patrol guy. So he wears a body camera. So he grabbed his body camera and said, dude, I'll just start recording. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So Louis backed off. He's drunk. The guy's drunk all the time. So,
While on the job and everything, huh?
Yeah. Not even in jurisdiction. He'd be out of the city on duty in a work car. The detective sergeants get a take-home car. So he'd be up there drinking and, driving there, drinking, driving back in his work car. To come sign reports in the end of the night, put in a slip for a few hours of overtime. And
good question, Danny.
It's a good question, but Venturino to me was out of sight and out of mind. I haven't even seen the guy since long before this incident with him happened.
Well,
my guess is probably not, because he just wasn't even on my radar.
But you have seen, I'm sure, some things. Maybe I knew some things that people. But you knew about let's say, the unofficial ranking system, right? I mean, you knew that's why he was brave enough or bold enough to leave that message.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so I know that there's probably other cops, and I think sometimes with people like that, a lot of people. I don't want to say just Danny, but a lot of people who had bad experiences with certain police officers. It's that other cops maybe sometimes don't say anything, and because there's that saying that people say, well, if you don't say anything, then you're not a good cop, right? Because they say good cops don't speak up. But I don't subscribe to that, because I get it. People want to they want to keep their job. They don't want to end up getting retaliated on because they spoke up. It makes their life more difficult. People don't want that drama and stress in their life. So I get that.
I mean, and also you got to understand, Louis was one of a kind. He really was. I mean, there may have been a lot more like him back in the day, But he's a guy who any guys that were like him that were left when Chucky took over, they started looking for the door because they didn't want to be around anymore because Chucky started cleaning things up. Now,
like retirement and stuff, right?
Right now, but Venturino was part of this little crew of misfits called the Olsenettes that had. So Venturino was an Olsenette, and the Olsenettes were in tight with the mayor because they had this cozy little financial relationship with him, right? The main Olsenette, Keith Olsen, controls the union. So Louis being Keith's right-hand guy and being Muller's right-hand guy, is offered the same levels of protection from City Hall that those two are. So Venturino and his bullshit were able to survive the Chucky years with their treacherous ways intact because they had mayoral protection. Their protection went above Chucky Gardner. So Louis didn't look for the door. Louis knew probably that his buddy, Knucklehead Smith, was going to be the police commissioner someday. So he stuck around and added 60th to his pension and fucking made tons of overtime in the end after they forced Chucky out and made Muller the commissioner. And Venturino benefited from all of that. And he probably knew that he was going to, which is why he didn't look for the door. He was a made guy the whole time. You know, if he wants to go drink up at his buddy's jewelry store, he'll just do it. And Chucky be damned if he's going to say anything about it. You know what I mean?
So if you're having the PBA president position is a pretty powerful position. If and we're going back to and I may even do a podcast about this with Empire Strategic Planning, Nick Spano, the lobbying firm that's owned by Nick Spano, and you have the former deputy mayor James Kavanaugh, also a lobbyist and partner there. He's now at the YIDA. That money that's being kicked up by the PBA, right? It's a lot of money, right? And so, if you're at the president of that and you have that relationship there, I guess with Empire Strategic Planning and Nick Spano, you're good. They're going to protect you as long as you play ball. So that's a position
Nick has a sweet tooth for the cash. So
if
you're the union president and you control the union cash, then you're going to get taken care of very well. And by extension, your moron friends. Your dear moron friends that you came up with on the job and who are near and dear to you, they're also going to get taken care of. Muller, who was a good test taker, made it up to chief, made it up to captain. So they made him a chief, then made him the commissioner. Louis, who passed a couple of tests, but much, much slower than Muller did, got taken care of in other ways. He got made a detective, even though he probably couldn't find a toilet in a bathroom. If I had some investigatory work that needed to be done, I'd call Ace Ventura before I called Louis Venturino.
Wow. Almost the same.
But he got made a detective sergeant, and he got to do all these fun things, anything except police work. While he was down there, he paid his pension with a whole lot of money, and then he left.
That happens a lot.
Yeah,
paying that pension.
Investigations.
Well, anyway, Anthony, it's a pleasure always talking to you. We'll be back on next week to pick up where we left off, folks, on Friday again at 8 o'clock, unless something happens, but we will let you know ahead of time. But as it stands now, 8 o'clock next Friday and every Friday after that. I'm Freddy Vazquez. I got to get a haircut, man, this weekend. Thank you for joining us, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us through the boring stuff, folks. It's going to get more fun again next week, I assure you.
And Danny, how about this? Reach out to Anthony. Let's set something up, and you can ask these questions to him also on the show. I think it'd be great.
You know what I wanted to do, Freddie? What I was thinking was the third email in that email chain with Koch. Maybe I'll send it to you like middle of next week. If you want, you can post it on the page ahead of time for people to read in preparation for the podcast.
Yeah. I actually posted some of the emails up actually that we were going to show tonight because I was going to use the Facebook to show them. So maybe it's a good thing, a way to promote them since we're going to show them anyway. You want people to kind of slow it down for them to read it. They'll have it there,
right.
But it's the same way you send it to me. It's not any different.
Right.
But anyway, all right, folks, I'm Freddy Vazquez. Thank you for joining me. It's Anthony DiMaggio. We'll see you next week. Thank you. Take care, Anthony. Have a good night.
All right, Fred. Take care.
Peace out. Folks, that was Anthony DiMaggio. I'm Freddy Vazquez. This is Basement Politics. I want to talk about affordable housing. And so I'm thinking about coming on a little later tonight to discuss that. Affordable and low-income housing. They didn't want it back then here in Yonkers, but has that changed? It doesn't seem like they want it now. I don't think so. Anyway, join me tonight if you're up for Midnight Madness. I'm Freddy Vazquez. Have a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy it. Freddy Vazquez, this is Politics Unfiltered. The only place you get it honest, unbiased. That was Anthony DiMaggio. He is exposing the way things once operated and is slowly no longer operating that way in the Yonkers Police Department. Many of the police officers he's spoken about, not all of them have since retired, except maybe one or two. But things have definitely improved in the Yonkers Police Department. So shout out to you guys. Please don't take that as this is an anti-police. It is not. We respect the men and women who wear the uniform. And again, I send my condolences, prayers to the family of Detective Sergeant Frank Goldino. Please, guys, be safe out there, young people out there with the fast cars. Just think about this. It's not, you killed someone out there. It's not just about you. Please at least have that consideration, because God forbid something happens, you're going to destroy a lot of families. Not only someone that you may kill, but think about your own family that I'm sure will be destroyed if something were to happen to you because you were being reckless in your car. All right, guys, young guys out there, I get it. So be safe. I'm Freddy Vazquez. Have a beautiful and blessed weekend. Thank you.
Freddy wins. Fatality.
You're watching Basement Politics with my dad, Freddy Vazquez. You're watching Basement Politics with my dad, Freddy Vazquez.
De que hablan español, mande unas estrellitas para nosotros. Are we? Let's make it happen, guys. Make me happy today. That's a lot of stars. Los de que hablan español, mande unas estrellitas para nosotros. Trabajamos muy duro para mantener la comunidad informada. Trabajamos muy duro para ayudar a nuestra comunidad, más a la gente que tiene negocios pequeñitos.
Freddy wins. Fatality.
Thank you for watching Basement Politics with my husband, Freddy Vazquez.
Freddy wins. Fatality.